This woman was on the phone and she introduced herself. She said, I'm hoping you'll write about my daughter, please. Could you do another story? Could the newspaper please do one more story on her? And I said, who is your daughter? And she said, Barbara Jean. I sat there that afternoon and I was so intrigued. This story about a girl who came on vacation to Virginia Beach and vanished. And I can't get it out of my head. I think about this 18-year-old who's just gone, just gone.
Barbara Jean and I were neighbors. When I was 8 years old, I moved into that neighborhood. We both were pretty silly girls. Anyone that is fun-loving like that is someone who I'm generally attracted to.
I can remember she was double-jointed. She would cartwheel through the living room instead of walking through. She was always in gymnastics. You know, she was always bending into crazy shapes and stuff, but a lot of energy, a lot of fun.
We would play ball with the dog, had sleepovers a lot at her house, and just doing, you know, the normal things that a 8, 10, 12-year-old would do.
At that time, I didn't really know Barbara that well, because Barbara was Joanne's little sister. You know, she was more of the pain in the neck little sister when we first met.
As far as the high school scene, we were majorettes and had a lot of fun at bonfires and pep rallies and that sort of thing.
She was only 18, and she'd also been very sick that year. Barbara Jean had Guillain-Barré disease, which is, I think it's some sort of lung ailment.
It's an infection that attacks your body and moves all the way up, and that's why when you're in the hospital, you have a respirator.
I remember a bunch of us visiting her in the hospital and then getting kicked out because we were too loud and making her laugh, and she was fatigued and we shouldn't be doing that.
It's kind of, you know, ironic. I mean, she could have died from that, and she lived through that whole thing, and then we still had her taken from us, so.
I was one of 4 people that went to Virginia Beach. It was a trip that was planned by Joanne and Pat Green, who is now Napolitano. And I was invited as the 3rd person to go. And then shortly before we left, Barbara became part of the crowd that was going. I was picked up early in the morning by Pat. She had just gotten a brand new car, and therefore she was the one that was driving. You know, we were 4 young girls excited to go to Virginia Beach.
I hadn't met Barbara or Jackie until the day we got in the car and drove to Virginia Beach. The trip down, it was like we all talked, I would say the entire trip. We started playing music and singing. You know, it was a fun ride down.
They came to Virginia Beach, I believe, August 20th, 1978. They checked into the old Aloha Motel on 15th Street, right there it was on Pacific Avenue and 15th. And they did what kids do when they come to the beach. They were having a great time. They were really enjoying themselves.
I think we probably arrived there early in the day and went to the beach for a while. We went to several bars, one of which, I believe the name of it was Peabody's.
They met 2 gentlemen who were working there at the time, and Barbara Jean took a liking to one of the 2 males. During the day, Joanne and Barbara Jean went to the Country Comfort, where they met a couple of other guys, to include one male who really wanted Barbara Jean to come to his yacht. We found out later that his name was James Moore, also known as Jimbo Moore.
You know, I think it was like 10:30, We were already back at the hotel. We were tired, I think because we had stayed out so late the night before. Came back to the hotel, and within 15 minutes to a half an hour, Barbara announced that she was going to take a walk down the street and go back to Peabody's. We didn't think anything of it, as strange as that sounds, to let her go off by herself, because we were in Virginia Beach. It was early for such a vacation spot. The streets were packed with people, vacationers, kids, people our age. And the bar, as I remember it, was only a few blocks away from the hotel. So it wasn't like she was walking far and she knew where she was going. And we all opted to stay in the hotel and let her go off. We get up the next day. It was probably very late in the morning, and realized that Barbara wasn't there. And honestly, our first reaction was, that son of a gun stayed out all night and never even called to tell us she was okay or where she was. So we were angry. Our initial response to her not being there was anger at her for not telling us where she was. And the hours went by that afternoon. And by mid-late afternoon, she still wasn't back. And then we realized that there might be something wrong.
So I remember that night we went to the bars with her picture and asking people, have you seen her? Have you seen her? And nobody had seen her. Joanne had to call her parents and tell her parents that we couldn't find her sister. It's bringing it back to me now. I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she was able to do that and tell her parents that we couldn't find her sister.
She said, how are you? And I said, good. How's everything down there? And she said, not good. We can't find Barbara. And my jaw just dropped, and I handed the phone over to Teresa.
And I never remember that they got in the car and they came down, and it was mayhem after that. The car ride home was extremely quiet. It was like nobody knew what to say, because there was nothing to say that was going to help anything. The fact it was shock that we didn't know what happened, and how is it possible for us to be in the car driving home without somebody we went with? That was very difficult to do.
When she first went missing, we didn't know whether somebody was holding her or whether she was held against her will. We knew I was getting married in 2 weeks.
When you talk to the Monaco family, they talk about Teresa's wedding as just this event they all had to get through. I mean, what a terrible thing. Your oldest daughter's getting married, should be the happiest day of her life. And they were waiting to see if Barbara Jean would walk in the door. And somebody in the family, I think it was Joanne, said when she didn't appear on Teresa's wedding day, they knew she was gone. There's no way she would have missed that. I remember interviewing Teresa, the oldest sister who was not on this trip. She felt guilty because she'd given Barbara Jean the money to come to Virginia Beach.
Barbara was more or less like the tag along, because she just graduated, and I actually ended up giving her the money to go. I mean, she had a rough year, and I just wanted her to have a good time.
She said she still had the canceled check. She said, I wish I hadn't given her the money, because then she might not have been able to go.
So we had heard that the family was going to hire private detectives to help with the case because it was out of state. And so hearing that can be quite costly, we wanted to do something about that to help the family. We just went to houses in all the different neighborhoods, and people were really open to giving us money. Of course, everyone in town knew about this story, and so it touched so many people.
About 10 months later, they offered a $10,000 reward for any information leading to the return of Barbara Jean. And I don't remember if it was dead or alive. I think it was. And the really strange thing was, a guy came forward, identified himself as Condor, which the reference to that is from a movie, 3 Days of the Condor. It was sort of a spy thriller.
The Monaco family notified the Virginia Beach Police Department. A takedown operation began. Conversations began between Monaco family and Condor, and a meeting was held between Condor and the Monaco family. This meeting took place at the Hilton Inn Hotel. He was taken down in the lobby of the Hilton Inn Hotel. Condor was identified as Carrie Copeland. That unknown male was later identified as James Jimbo Moore, the same male from the Country Comfort who was talking to Barbara Jean about the yacht. That he and the other male did in fact rape and murder Barbara Jean Monaco, and then put her body in a small pond by a burrow pit area off of Oceana Boulevard near Bills Road.
And they went out right after that, I think, and dragged a borrow pit out near Oceana. They found a cinder block with a freshly cut rope, which was how supposedly she'd been dumped in that water. And there was no DNA on a rope. There was nothing.
He denied doing any wrongdoing with Barbara Jean Monaco. He took a polygraph. He did not pass. It was learned that Jimbo Moore was a person that was with him that night. Jimbo Moore was also spoken with, and he too did not pass the polygraph. Both of them would both deny and then admit and then deny that they had seen Barbara Jean the night in question of her disappearance. They were not able to provide information about how they left, how they all went their separate ways. They all denied, both of them, that they would rape or murder Barbara Jean Monaco. So it was really this rabbit hole of listening to the two main characters go back and forth and waffling on what did or did not occur that night. Both of them can put Barbara Jean Monaco in a station wagon on the night of her disappearance. The station wagon was said to be white or tan. Jimbo Moore was interviewed, and he confirmed that he did see Barbara Jean Monaco on the night of her disappearance. He confirmed that they went to a boat off of Oriole Drive. He described her having her specific footwear to be clogs on the railing.
You were there, you know
but I
something.
don't remember.
And I believe you could help us, and I believe you could come up with some answers and help these officers come up with some answers on this thing. If it's someplace where they can look, where you can suggest in your imagination where they
if I
can
had a
look.
place, I would tell them.
Your mama tell them anything about come on get some of it or anything?
No, I can't remember that.
Your mama see
I know. That doesn't really sound like me saying something like that. But like I say, if being drunk, I might have said something like that.
If he went into court and said that you told him to come on and get some of that, what would you say about it in court if he took the stand and swore on the oath?
What would I say?
Mm-hmm. What could you say?
I couldn't say.
Would you be able to
I couldn't remember.
take the stand then and get up there and hold up your right hand to the Almighty?
And I wouldn't be able to do that because I don't remember.
He continued to deny any nefarious actions with Barbara Jean Monaco, and also cannot provide an explanation about how that night ended. 2 days later, Jimbo Moore killed himself. Jimbo Moore died of carbon monoxide poisoning after being found in his vehicle. This is an odd case, most importantly because we don't have Barbara Jean's body.
Without a body and without cooperating witnesses, the case has just been sitting there with these names and these guys that would not talk. Barbara Jean's father, I think, was 55 when she went missing. Her mother was 47. Her father died a few years ago, and her mother's now 88. The Commonwealth's attorney is dead. Two of the people that were believed to have been possibly involved are dead. One committed suicide, one died of cancer. The Aloha Motel is torn down. I went into mourning the day I drove by and saw the wrecking ball there. It was like another piece of this story is just gone. You know, this just been forgotten. On the 25th anniversary of Barbara Jean's disappearance, they held a memorial service for her in Connecticut. And I went up there. That's the only time I've ever been to Derby, Connecticut. It was one of the most moving things I've ever seen. I mean, a beautiful old Catholic church. And in the front, I believe it's probably where Teresa was married, where probably they were all baptized. And in the front of the church where you'd normally have a casket, there was just a picture and a big bouquet that said daughter on it. And it was sad seeing a funeral service without a body. But they were trying to get what we all talk about as closure, which is a term that gets overused, but I really do believe that's what the family was looking for that day. And my impression is that they didn't get it. You know, having a service makes you feel good for a while, but you still have the mystery. The Monaco mystery just sits out there.
My parents really couldn't deal with not having the closure, so they decided to have that mass. And I turned around and the whole church was full, and there were, you know, people that I went to high school with that I hadn't seen in years. They just started crying. It was so touching.
The most touching part was when the lieutenant from the Connecticut State Police spoke. So poignant. It was at that service that he spoke of the fact that one of the suspects that they had interviewed had committed suicide. That was pretty incriminating right there. So is that justice? I don't know. I don't know if I'm the one to be able to answer that question. But certainly the guilt was heavy enough on that individual to feel that he does not deserve to go on in life, but at his own hand, versus Barbara didn't have that choice.
I've been told by Joanne that there's a monument in the cemetery up in Derby, Connecticut, with Barbara Jean's name on it. I think it may be her own monument or she's on her dad's.
When my dad died, she just wanted to have some, you know, so she has something written on the stone there about my sister, so.
I'd obviously like to find out what happened to her and bring justice to those responsible. But to bring the whole story together and find out the truth, what really happened to her, what transpired, you know, that night.
Barbara's father passed not knowing what happened, but, you know, I think Mrs. Monaco would rest comfortably if at least she got some closure, whatever that is. You know, if they could find out. And, you know, and poor Joanne. This has affected her very badly.
For my mom's sake, I just wish that she could have her remains back. So if there was someone that knew something in Virginia Beach, if they knew anything at all, if they would just come forward, it would just, nobody knows how much it would help.
She should be remembered as just a really fun-loving, silly person who was a great friend, like a sister. She was tough. Fun, silly, a good friend, but a tough chick too.
You know, she didn't have much time on this life. She only had 18 years. She just went through high school and it was taken from her. So she didn't have a lot of time to do much, but the time she was here, she was just kind and caring and a lot of fun, energetic, and it's just sad that her life was taken from her so young.
We rely on the relationship we have with our community to get cases like these solved. If you have any information, please call us at 1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP or the Virginia Beach Police Detective Bureau at 757-385-4101.